Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a place where you can be, belong, and become the very best version of yourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, we want you to know you're welcome, you're loved, you're accepted. Thank you. Thank you for spending time with us here. And so, we always want to start by reminding you if you'd like to support what we're doing, if you'd like more information, if you'd like to subscribe to this channel, all those details are right there below. Check them out. Journey with us in this in these conversations over the Bible. We think they bring so much life. And so, before we step into our series again, Genesis, I'd like to go into some question and answers. Again, thank you so much for engaging with me on social media, email, phone calls, all of it. I just love it. And I think there's so much life in that back and forth. And so one of the conversations I had lately, someone asked me in the middle of all of the chaos right now in our country here in the U.S. They asked an interesting phrase that many theologians they've kind of gone back and forth with for a while. If you are a Jewish person, when you hear this phrase, it's very obvious. You've heard this phrase. For you, it goes to a specific time, an event. But for many Christians today, there's a lot of interesting, like pointing forwards, a lot of guesses about what this meant. If you're not Jewish, of course, it's going to be a little difficult. But when you delve into what the Jews believed about this, what they actually went through during the time period it was written, it makes sense. And so here's the question. Here's the question. I kind of baited you with it, right? So here it is. What is the abomination of desolation? Right? Desolation. Spoken of in Daniel. What is that? Again, it sounds pretty serious, right? The abomination of desolation. Is that some future event when the world crumbles? Is it what is it? Right? For a Jewish person, you'd immediately make the connection. So, first off, when you understand the book of Daniel, this is where that phrase comes from. Understand this: the book of Daniel was not written during the Babylonian captivity. It wasn't. That's when Torah was compiled, right? So again, if you're living in Babylonian captivity, you're looking back. And so during that time, they're writing about the Exodus. They're writing about Moses. They're writing about a time when their people were in captivity, when they were broken, when they thought they lost everything. Where's their hope? They looked back. And so the story of Daniel is written in a time when the Jewish people again find themselves in a bit of captivity. They find themselves where their temple is broken, destroyed again, right? They're in this place again. And so the story they look at is not the story of Moses. The story they look at is a story found in the times of Babylon. It's an oral tradition that's told over and over again. Yeah. So again, the story you can imagine, of course, has gotten bigger in some ways. Various people have become more heroic. The evil individuals of the story, right? The anti-heroes, they become larger than life as well. And so the story kind of took on a bigger life of its own. And so when you look, though, when you understand this, you'll know this is written during a time when the Jews are under Antiochus, the fourth of Epiphanes, right? And so this is 175 to 164 BC. This is the time that this is written. And again, it's written in order to give these individuals hope, telling them that there is new life just around the corner. Hold on. It's the same reason that the Gospels were written post 70 AD when their temple was destroyed. And so this is the reason behind the story of Daniel, right? The lion's den, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, Nebuchadnezzar, and the huge statues. That is the reason behind it. So again, it was never about pointing forward, predicting the future. This book was written, right? This compilation of stories was all written in order to give a people who are in the middle of oppression some hope. So back to that word, that phrase, right? The abomination of desolation. Here's what happened. Here's what happened to them. And they called this event, this action by Antiochus, they called it the abomination of desolation. It's actually written in their historical annals. We know this. And so here's what happened. When they came and they took siege of Israel, right, of their people, what they did is they went directly to the temple, because that's where, for the Greeks, the temple was also the place where like all life happened. It's where you sacrifice to your gods. It was very important. And so for them, when they went into to conquer a nation, they often would go right to the temple and they destroy it. Or they would do this, which was a very common practice. They would take their sacrifice into the people who they just conquered, into their temple, onto their altar, and they would sacrifice, the Greeks would sacrifice to their god, Zeus, or whichever god they had given the battle to that day. So Antiochus, what he does is he goes even a step further, right? For Jewish people, the pig is the dirtiest, it's unclean. The pig is associated with evil. It's associated with all the negative things in the world. The pig, so you don't eat pig. That's why bacon, if you're a Jewish person, you've never had bacon, right? So what he does here is he takes a pig, he sacrifices it on the Jewish altar to his god Zeus. And in that moment, there were cries out. This was the worst thing one could do, was to defile the temple. And so what Antiochus does here is he enrages Israel. And we call this the abomination of desolation. It is the worst thing someone could do to their temple, apart from destroying it brick by brick, which is what the Romans end up doing. Do you get it? Yeah, interesting stuff. When you look back, the whole thing makes sense. It actually really pops. Yeah, it is not a future prediction about anything. This event is actually a very Jewish historical event that happened. Yeah, it's not pointing. It's not, of course, pointing backwards or whatever. They bring up this phrase because it's a phrase that the people understood at that time. They understood the outrageous act that had just been done to them, and they could associate it back with when Jewish people were taken by Babylon. They made the connection, and so we can make it too. Yeah, what events in our history right now, in our culture, are just defiling the very divine? Yeah, there are many things in our culture that we could say are abomination of desolation. Yeah, and so we learn to avoid those things, also knowing that there's life after that. Yeah? So good. Okay, good. So let's go to Genesis. Thank you for the question. I hope that helped. So Genesis, we're talking about Genesis. And of course, we just talked about a little bit of Babylon there, right? Genesis, again, not a historical book, not written to give Israel's exact history. No tribes really did that. They weren't writing their history when they told story. What they were doing is compiling all of the oral tradition. Again, the poems, the narratives, the mythological pieces, all of it. They'd put it all together. And then they would begin to compile it. And so Israel, again, they find themselves in captivity in Babylon. 587 BC, it's all compiled, and it's compiled so that they could essentially keep Judaism Jewish. Yeah, keep the Hebrew people Hebrew. And so we don't want to assimilate, right? It's a melting pot of so many cultures. They did not want to lose their identity. And so they told the stories, right? They created Torah, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. They compile it all. And it's beautiful. It's what they would call holy. Yeah. And so again, all of these pieces together, the poetry, the prophetic musings, the prophetic writings, the challenges, all of it is all there. And so Torah, again, is a complete narrative of Israel miniaturized. Every single time you hear a story, whether it's the story of Noah, whether it's the story of Cain and Abel, whatever it is, place in your mind, take those names out and put Israel. And the thing will make sense. You'll say, oh, I got it, right? It's beautiful. And so we're going to move into Genesis 1. And we start Genesis 1, chapter 1, and we start with this God who, again, does not do what the Babylonian gods does. He steps into the chaos, creates order, rather than stepping into life and creating chaos. This God creates life and order. This God hovers over the chaos, brings order. And just like we've shown before, God here, what he does is this God begins to create order by beginning to remove things from the table, just like the good busboy, right? I hope you tip your busboy well. Yeah, so the busboy, they basically clear the room. They clear some room, and they take off what's dirty, and they begin to slowly create separation. They put the salt and the pepper and all of those things so that some life can take place at that table again. That's the idea. This is what this God is doing. So let's read Genesis 1, 9 through 13. This is a larger section today we're going to do, but I think it's worth it. So here we go. And God said, "Let the water that is beneath the heavens gather into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. Good. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Now, let me remind you, this word good, this word means life. It means cyclical life. And so good, this word, it does not mean perfect. Perfect is it's stagnant, right? Perfect is none, it doesn't change. This word here in the Hebrew, it means life. And so the cycles of life, think about our seasonal cycles, right? There's spring, into summer, into fall, into winter, back into spring. And so in order for life to be good, you have to have these cycles according to the Hebrews. And so it's not saying that there was no death. It's not saying that there was no spring, there was no fall, there was no winter. It's saying that it was good. The word meaning seasonal, changes, movement, growth. It's dynamic. Life is dynamic. We change, we grow, we shift. Good. Yeah? Okay, beautiful. It's good. And so it was good. And so it continues. God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, seed yielding herbs and fruit, trees producing fruit according to its kind, in which the sea is found and on earth." And it was so. And the earth gave forth vegetation, seed yielding herbs according to its kind, and trees producing fruit. And it was seed is found according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. And it was evening and it was morning, a third day. So we got through day 1 and day 2. Now we're on day 3. So because we like to go verse by verse, because there's so much depth here, I want you to look at this first section that we just read. God said, "Let the water that is beneath the heavens gather into one place. Let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was good. So remember this. If you are a Hebrew and ancient tribal people, you again believe that your God stepped into the chaos. And this God literally separated the waters. And again, firmament above, there was water above and there was water below, right? And there you have Sheol, and you've got the oceans, you've got the sun in between, you've got all of these, life happens in between. Life does not happen up there or down there. Life happens, according to the Hebrews, right in the middle. Like, think about the theology just in that alone. Life happens right there in the middle. It's not way up there out of reach. It's not way down there in the depths of death. That's not where life is. Life is right here in the nitty-gritty. It's right there with the dirt. It's right there with the sky and the sun and all those living things. That's where life happens, right there in the middle. And so this God creates a separation, creates space, right? And so to bring order, I want you to think about this. To bring order, to bring life, sometimes some things need to be separated in order for there to be growth. Sometimes some things need to be separated before there can be growth. So think about this. Sometimes it's so important to cut a relationship, isn't it? Sometimes there are relationships that we're a part of that are bringing pain and brokenness. Sometimes you become part of a toxic relationship, and sometimes you just have to hit unfriend. And sometimes a very literal unfriending. Sometimes you have to walk away. Sometimes there are divorces. Sometimes there are separations, whatever it is. Sometimes we have to step away from some people. And when we do, understand the whole Hebrew creation narrative says when we step away from that relationship, new relationships are formed. You've created space, but there must be a separation. And sometimes that's so important to do. Think about jobs for a moment, occupations. Like I hear all the time from so many friends, "I hate my job," they'll say. "I can't stand my boss. I hate it, I hate it, I hate it." And the more I ask questions of it, sometimes Sometimes it's really not the job, it's really you. It's really me, right? Other times, other times it is the job. It is the environment. It is the boss, right? It is potentially those things. And when it is that thing, sometimes there needs to be a separation. Sometimes you have to walk away from it. Think about this one. Sometimes you become part of a religious system, right? And sometimes the religious system doesn't work. What happens when the thing doesn't fit anymore and you choose to stay? Yeah, what happens to your soul? And again, I've met so many people who have gone through this interesting journey where they've said, I can't listen to the songs anymore, right? I can't listen to the pastor speak anymore because what they're saying is just, it feels like nonsense, right? It doesn't fit anymore. I've outgrown some of those things. And what do? Do you stay just because that's always been what you do? Or do you leave knowing that at some point in time, the new thing will happen? I had a friend who was talking to me about this the other day. I asked if I could quote him. He said this about leaving his church community, the one that he'd outgrown. He said this: "It was the most difficult action I've ever taken. There was pain, guilt, and lost friendships, but I knew for the sake of my family, we had to leave our religious structure. The guilt and shame is something I never want to pass down to my children." And so, Jeremy, as we continued talking, as we've continued staying in dialogue, he said this about leaving. And I thought this quote was fascinating too, especially this last portion. Listen to this one. He said, "After leaving, we floundered for a bit, unsure of where to go on Sundays. But then life opened up." Come on, like life opened up. That's beautiful. Yeah, life opened up. We found a new community and also found the divine in our weekend nature hikes, neighborhood socials, and community soccer games. I understand the soccer games big time, Jeremy. Life has opened up. Life opened up. Think about this. When you create space, when you step away from the thing, when you split the waters, some go this way, but when you split the thing, what happens is there is space in between, and that space is just dying to be filled. And the question is, what are you going to fill the space with? Because this is what this God does. He creates the space and life begins to open up. Now watch this portion. "Let the earth sprout vegetation, seed yielding herbs and fruit trees producing fruit according to its kind, in which its seed is found on earth. And it is so. And the earth gave forth vegetation, seed yielding herbs according to its kind, trees producing fruit in which its seed is found according to its kind, and God saw that it was good." So we don't really live in agrarian culture anymore like we used to, right? But here's the beautiful thing here. When space is created, the opportunity for life to happen is there. Yeah. And here's what I mean by that. My family and I, we decided we're going to plant some stuff. We're actually going to have a garden. And so here are the garden boxes. I want to share with you some pictures. It'll be kind of fun storytelling. So here's some boxes that my son and I built. These are our garden boxes. And here's the thing. We could have just built the boxes and been like, we're done. They look nice. We'll just leave them outside. But the thing about a garden box is that it needs to be a garden in order to be a garden box. There needs to be something inside growing, right? And so, of course, we lined the box with some protection from weeds, right? And then my son Case and I, we threw a bunch of dirt in there. And we made sure it was good dirt. Yeah, we actually pulled it from our compost bin. There was so much good dirt, so much rich nutrients in that dirt. And so we put the dirt in. But again, knowing that there has to be more, right? You can't just throw dirt in. You need something else. So you add some life to it, but you need to continue adding more. And so what we did, of course, is we added some plants. And those plants were so little. And truth be told, here in Idaho, we had some days where it got so cold that we had to take some of the plants out. And we had to replant other plants. But those little plants, it's incredible what happens when you give plants sunshine and water and some love. Kason likes to go and talk to the plants. We're not sure if it works or not. But when you give these plants love and space to grow, this is what happens. Yeah. Look at those tomato plants. They're not quite there. They haven't given us fruit yet, but soon. Look at how big they are. We've got a raspberry plant grown in the back. It's already given us some raspberries. We've got a couple pepper plants there. The next one, we've got some broccoli. I've never grown broccoli. I don't even actually like broccoli all that much. But we've got broccoli. We've got kale. We've got more tomatoes. We've got mint, tons of mint. I don't know what I'm going to do with all the mint. We have so much growing. And it's so beautiful to go outside and see the fruits of our labor. But the cool thing is, we created space. We created space, and when we did, life started to happen because life explodes when it's given space to thrive. And your life will explode. It will thrive when it is given the proper space. When some things go and some things are given, it gives space. It gives space for life to happen. And then watch this last part of these verses. It says this, and it was evening and it was morning, a third day. I find this idea of third day really interesting because I think the Hebrews, and I'm not alone in this because many rabbis will say the same thing, but the third day is a very special day if you're Hebrew. This idea of the third day, you can find it in many, many narratives. Probably the most popular of all narratives was that of Jonah. Jonah is swallowed by the whale. He goes down to Sheol, right, where death is, the word meaning death. He goes down there. And after that, after this death, right, think of a plant. After it goes into the ground, it's not too long until it starts popping up. And it's always the idea with the Hebrews, the third day is when life begins to happen again. New life pops through the ground. The dirt, death, right? The death, the ground, the darkness. Life sprouts. And so, of course, Jonah is shot out from the whale, right? He was down in the belly of the whale. The whale spits him out. And Jonah is given new life again. And Jonah, the character of Jonah, there are subtle, interesting changes to the prophet when he does it. Yeah, because new life happens again. And so it's not a surprise at all when you look at the New Testament, you have Jesus. And you're seeing these 3 days again, right? Life, death, resurrection. Yeah, the third day. And so again, the third day, when you think of Jesus and the life of Jesus and the teachings of Jesus, you'll see the kingdom of heaven, right? This living, breathing kingdom of heaven. It is within you. You are the thing. You're the plant. You're the temple. You're where it happens. You're where the life takes place. Go, sin no more. Stop doing the things that keep taking you down into the dirt. Sin no more. Live in the middle. Yeah, stop going there. Live in the middle fully. You will do greater things. There is new life, and you're going to be a bigger plant. There's going to be more and more fruit. Beautiful, right? I am making all things new. Like all of this, it's so good. Yeah. She thought she saw the gardener. Think about that phrase. When Mary goes to the tomb and she's talking to this person, she's thinking this guy's the gardener. It's really Jesus because Jesus is the next Adam, right? The one that takes what's been dead and broken and brings it back to life. Yeah. Over and over again, I've come to bring life. It's so good. Third day brings life after the darkness. And it only happens when there is that separation that occurs so that the new life can take place right there in the middle, right between the waters. Yeah. Oh, I love this. So we want to take it home, right? We want a way to actually apply this. And so we're going to give you some ways this week to apply what we just talked about. And so, number one, what I'd love for you to do is I want you to write down various times in your life, maybe even buy a journal. That might be a good idea. Buy a journal or even just get a 3-ring notebook binder, whatever it is. But write down various times in your life where you thrived. And that word, I use it purposely. Thrive, meaning this time in your life where you just felt so alive, so full, right? You were so happy. Write down some of those times in your life. And I want you to think about this. When you were so happy, when you were feeling so full, what needed to happen in order for that to be experienced? What things were taking place in your life where you felt full and alive? Think about that. And then the next one I'd like you to do is this. I'd love for you to read Isaiah 40. Isaiah 40 is full of life. It's full of this idea of newness, freedom, what happens after the separation takes place and the new life opens up. Read Isaiah 40. Maybe even get your highlighter out. Look for those ideas of new life. They're all there, just waiting for you to read them. And so, let me read it one more time. And God said, "Let the water that is beneath the heavens gather into one place. Let the dry land appear." And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the waters he called seas. And God saw that it was Tov, good. Yeah, dynamic, changing, Tov. And God said, "Let the earth sprout vegetation, seed yielding herbs, and fruit trees producing fruit according to its kind, in which its seed is found and on earth." And it was so. It was Tov. It was good. Yeah. And the earth gave forth vegetation, seed yielding herbs according to its kind, and trees producing fruit, in which its seed is found according to its kind. And God saw that it was Tov. It was good. It was dynamic. And it was evening and it was morning, a third resurrection new day. I hope you enjoyed this. I love this. I love this, love this, love this. If you would like to donate to this, support what we're doing, please consider going to www.ethos-church.org/donate. Give those donations. They help us continue doing this ministry we do. Tax-deductible donation. Also, if you'd like to actually interact with this live, some of these discussions on some of these stories, on what's going on in this world right now, all of it, please consider emailing me, tonywerfel@gmail.com. I'll send you the link, or even subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll be able to get that link as well. But we would love to have you join us for our Ethos Living Room sessions, and that's the first and the third of every month. And so we'd love for you to join us on Zoom. And then lastly, we'd love for you to subscribe, hit the bell button, keep in touch with us. Folks, we love you. Thank you so much for joining us today in this dynamic Tov series over Genesis. Everyone take care, and we'll see you next week.